What if I told you 1971 wasn't just about Zeppelin or The Who? Tucked between the giants were tracks that defined the year in ways nobody saw coming. Some were smooth, some were funky, and some, well, they changed music forever. Stick around. This is 1971 like you've never heard it before. Number 1. What's Going On by Marvin Gaye. It sounded like a prayer, wrapped in a groove. Released in early 1971, What's Going On wasn't just a single, it was a turning point. Motown had built its empire on clean, catchy hits. Marvin Gaye asked for something deeper, and Berry Gordy nearly refused to release it, thinking it was too political. Instead, it became a sensation. Number 2 on the Hot 100, number 1 on the R&B chart, and one of the most important singles of the decade. The song wasn't really about one protest or one moment. It was about empathy, love, and the turbulence of America in 1971. Recorded in Detroit with members of the Funk Brothers, you can literally hear the room. Congas, bass, voices drifting in the background. It felt like Marvin pulled you straight into a conversation. Number 2, Imagine by John Lennon. What if you could write one song so simple, so spare, that it became universal? That's what Lennon did with Imagine. Released in October 1971, the track barely hit number 3 in the US at the time, but its reach grew year after year. Lennon wrote it at his home with Yoko Ono, inspired by her conceptual poetry, then cut it in New York with Phil Spector producing. What's striking is how unadorned it is. No guitar solos, no big band, just piano, a soft drum, a few strings. That sparseness is what makes it unforgettable. You may say I'm a dreamer. Today, it's more than a hit. It's an anthem for peace, sung everywhere from stadiums to vigils. Proof that sometimes the quietest songs echo the loudest. Number 3, Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones, and then the opposite of quiet. Brown Sugar kicked off the Stones' 1971 Sticky Fingers album, and from the first riff, it was pure swagger. Recorded at Muscle Shoals Sound Studio in Alabama, the track was raw, raunchy, and unapologetic. The lyrics were controversial, still are, but the groove was undeniable. It shot to number 1 in the US and number 2 in the UK, cementing the Stones as the world's biggest rock band of the moment. What made it stick wasn't just attitude, it was sound. Muscle Shoals gave them grit. Bobby Keys added that ripping sax solo, and Jagger's delivery felt both dangerous and magnetic. Released April 1971, Brown Sugar was the sound of a band at the height of its powers and one of the defining riffs of rock history. Number 4, It's Too Late by Carole King. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't sound bitter, it just sounds true. Carole King's Tapestry album defined 1971, and It's Too Late was its beating heart. Co-written with Tony Stern, it told the story of a relationship slipping away, not with drama, but with quiet resignation. Released in April, it soared to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 5 weeks. By the end of the year, it was the number 3 song in America, and it even won the Grammy for Record of the Year. Recorded in Los Angeles with a stripped-down band, the track has that warm, lived-in sound that made Tapestry one of the best-selling albums of all time. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't loud, it was simply real. Number 5, Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers. At just 2 minutes long, it might be the most unforgettable heartbreak song ever recorded. Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. Bill Withers wasn't a star in 1971. He was a factory worker in West Virginia who recorded his debut album Just As I Am with Booker T. Jones producing. Out of it came Ain't No Sunshine, short, raw, and haunting. The famous I Know, I Know, I Know wasn't even written down. Withers just repeated it in the studio, and everyone agreed it was perfect. The song climbed to number 3 on the Hot 100, won a Grammy for Best R&B Song, and instantly made Withers a household name. Proof that sometimes less really is more. Number 6, Family Affair by Sly and The Family Stone. By late 1971, Sly Stone had taken funk somewhere darker, grittier, and more modern than anyone expected. Family Affair didn't sound like anything else on the radio. Sparse, hypnotic, with that drum machine pulse and a Rhodes keyboard carrying the weight. It was Sly's first single in 2 years, and when it hit hard. Released in November, it went straight to #1 on the Hot 100, staying there for 3 weeks. The track's murky groove and introspective lyrics showed how far the band had come since Dance to the Music. Recorded in Los Angeles, it was almost more of a studio experiment than a band jam. Sly handled much of it himself, layering in subtle textures and letting the mood simmer. It pointed the way toward the funk and soul of the next decade. Number 7, American Pie by Don McLean. 8.5 minutes and not a second wasted.
Long, long time ago, I can still remember how that music used to make me smile.
Released in October 1971, American Pie quickly became more than a song. It became a cultural riddle. Was it about Buddy Holly, the loss of innocence, America itself? McLean never fully explained, which only made it bigger. The single hit #1 in early 1972, but it dominated airwaves through the end of '71. A story song epic at a time when radio was still mostly playing tidy 3-minute singles. Recorded at the record plant in New York, its acoustic guitars, rolling piano, and choir-like backing vocals made it feel timeless. A folk hymn that still sparks sing-alongs 50 years later. Number 8, Maggie May by Rod Stewart. Sometimes the B-side wins. Maggie May wasn't even meant to be the hit. Reason to Believe was the single, but DJs flipped it over, and the world went crazy for Stewart's raspy tale of a young man and his older lover. It went to #1 in both the US and UK in October 1971, and finished as Billboard's #2 song of the year. What made it click was the mix of rough-edged honesty and irresistible hooks. By the Faces' Ronnie Wood and anchored by that unforgettable mandolin solo. It was scrappy, raw, and yet perfectly radio-ready. Number 9, How Can You Mend a Broken Heart by Bee Gees. Before disco, the Bee Gees were heartbreak poets. In 1971, the Gibb brothers were regrouping after nearly breaking apart. Out of that came How Can You Mend a Broken Heart, a soaring ballad filled with falsetto and lush orchestration. It became their very first US #1 hit, topping the Hot 100 in August 1971. Barry and Robin's harmonies gave it weight, while producer Arif Mardin's arrangements wrapped it in velvet. The track set the stage for their later disco reinvention, but in '71, it was all about timeless balladry and unfiltered emotion. Number 10, Just My Imagination, Running Away With Me, by The Temptations' Motown magic, but bittersweet. Released in January 1971, this ballad was a departure for The Temptations. Known for psychedelic soul experiments with Norman Whitfield, here they returned to something gentler, a daydream of love that never was. It soared to #1 on the Hot 100, proving that even at the height of funk and rock, a soft, yearning ballad could still rule the charts.
It was just my imagination, once again.
For Kendricks, it was a farewell. Not long after its success, he left the group, making this song a graceful closing chapter to the Temptations' classic era. Number 11, Me and Bobby McGee by Janis Joplin, a hit born out of tragedy.
Busted flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train.
Recorded just days before her death in 1970, Me and Bobby McGee was released posthumously in January 1971. Written by Chris Christopherson and Fred Foster, Janis turned it into something raw and unforgettable. By March, it climbed to #1 on the Hot 100, making her only chart-topping single.
Freedom is just another word for nothing left to lose.
The track was cut at Sunset Sound in Los Angeles with the Full Tilt Boogie Band, and Janis's voice carried both grit and fragility, a reminder of how much was lost when she passed at only 27. Number 12, Theme from Shaft by Isaac Hayes, Cool Personified.
Remember me?
When MGM tapped Isaac Hayes to score Shaft, nobody expected the soundtrack's title theme to explode onto the charts. But with its funky wah-wah guitars, lush strings, and Hayes' silky spoken vocals, it was unstoppable. Released in September 1971, it hit #1 on the Hot 100 in November, the first major crossover soul theme to do so.
Who's the black private dick that's a sex machine to all the chicks?
It went on to win the Oscar for Best Original Song, making Hayes the first black composer ever to take home that prize. Theme from Shaft wasn't just a hit, it was a cultural shift. Number 13, Let's Stay Together by Al Green. Smooth, silky, and timeless.
I'm so in love with you. I guess you know that, huh?
Released in November 1971, Let's Stay Together wasn't just another soul single. It was the song that crowned Al Green the King of Soul. Produced in Memphis with Willie Mitchell, its mix of laid-back groove, soft horns, and Al's feather-light falsetto made it an instant classic. The single went to #1 on the Hot 100 in early '72, but it sounded eternal from the moment it dropped. Even today, it feels like the definition of a love song, intimate yet universal. Number 14, Riders on the Storm by The Doors, a haunting farewell. Released in June 1971, Riders on the Storm was the last single The Doors recorded with Jim Morrison before his death that July. Built around Ray Manzarek's swirling Fender Rhodes and Morrison's whispered overdubs, it played like a ghost story set to jazz rock. The track peaked at number 14 on the Hot 100, but its impact went far beyond the charts. It's moody, cinematic, and eerily prophetic. Morrison singing about storm riders just weeks before disappearing into legend in Paris. Number 15, Take Me Home Country Roads by John Denver. Now, time for the sing-along.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Released in April 1971, this song climbed to number 2 on the Hot 100 and became Denver's signature. Written with Bill Danoff and Taffy Nibbert, it was meant to be a kind of folk postcard, but it grew into something bigger, a shared anthem.
Country roads, take me home.
Adopted as an official state song of West Virginia, it's one of those tracks that can still make a crowd of strangers belt out every word, a perfect emotional lift before the finale.